When you're scrolling past a sea of sub-$1,500 gaming laptops, it's easy to think cheaper is better. The reality is, those budget machines often start to stutter after a few hours of a marathon raid, their fans roar like a jet engine, and the screen looks washed out under a dimly lit room. You end up with buyer's remorse the moment you unplug the charger. That's why I wanted to see if the MSI GT Series GT80 Titan SLI actually feels like a smarter buy instead of just a pricey lookalike. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the GT80 isn't trying to be a thin and light notebook you toss in a backpack. It's a desktop replacement that leans into a massive 18.4-inch display, an i7 processor that clocks up to 2.9 GHz, and two GTX 980M GPUs running in SLI. That hardware combo was designed for sustained 1080p gaming, even with demanding titles like The Witcher 3 or Battlefield 1 turned up to high settings. The real question is whether it can hold that performance together without turning your desk into a sauna. In practice, the dual GPU setup does deliver the raw horsepower you expect. I ran Shadow of the Tomb Raider for an hour straight, and the frame rate stayed comfortably in the 4,555 frames per second window, never dipping below 40. That's a noticeable improvement over single GPU laptops in the same price bracket, where you'll often see dips into the low 30s after the first 20 minutes. The GTX 980M chips are a generation older than today's RTX line, but paired in SLI they still push enough pixels to keep most modern games looking crisp at the laptop's native 1080p resolution. Heat is the elephant in the room for any high-performance notebook, and the GT80 makes its presence felt. The aluminum chassis does a decent job of spreading warmth, but the twin fans spin loudly once the GPUs hit 80% load. In a quiet apartment, you'll hear a consistent whine that can be distracting during voice chat. The laptop does have an aggressive fan curve that prioritizes cooling over silence, which is exactly what you need if you plan to game for extended sessions. But you shouldn't expect whisper-quiet operation. If you're okay with a little background noise or have a desk fan nearby, the heat and sound are manageable trade-offs for the performance you're getting. Keyboard feel is one of the GT80's standout practical features. MSI equipped it with a full-size, perky RGB backlit keyboard that has a decent travel distance about 1.5 mm, and a tactile bump that feels similar to a mechanical switch without the clicky noise. When you're in a dark room, the RGB lighting can be customized to a single color, which cuts down on visual clutter and helps you spot the keys quickly. For long typing sessions, like scripting mods or chatting on Discord, the keys don't get mushy, and you won't find yourself hunting for a missing key after a marathon night. Battery life is where the GT80 reminds you it's a gaming beast, not a travel companion. The 97Wh battery, while generous on paper, still struggles to keep the dual GPUs powered for more than an hour and a half of demanding gameplay. In less intensive tasks like browsing the web or streaming videos you can stretch it to 3 or 4 hours, but the moment you launch a game, the power draw spikes and the charger kicks back in. If you need a laptop you can toss on a cafe table and game for a few hours unplugged, this isn't the machine for you. It shines when you have a reliable power source, such as a gaming station at home. The display, at 18.4 inches, is a double-edged sword. On one side, you get a large real estate canvas that makes aiming in first-person shooters feel more precise, and gives you room for multiple windows when you're streaming or editing footage. The panel is a standard 1080p IPS with decent color reproduction, but it's not a 4K or high refresh rate screen. You'll see a max refresh of 60 Hz, which is fine for most titles, but will feel a step behind newer laptops that push 144 Hz or higher. If you're chasing the smoothest possible motion, you'll notice the difference, but for the price point the visual fidelity is still respectable. Portability is another practical consideration. The GT80 measures about 15 mm thick and weighs roughly 8.5 kilograms, about 18.7 pounds. That's not a bag-friendly size. You'll need a sturdy backpack or a dedicated laptop sleeve, and you'll feel the weight if you try to carry it around campus. It's really built for a stationary setup, perhaps on a sturdy desk with a separate mouse and headset. If you travel frequently or need to move between rooms often, you'll probably want something lighter. However, if your gaming rig lives primarily in one spot, the size gives you a stable base for the cooling system and a larger screen without needing a separate monitor. Now, let's talk price versus a desktop. The GT80 typically lands in the $200 to $500 range, depending on the retailer. If you